Since I stole this pregnancy, I have never known any peace. All the problems of this lady came into me too.
She thought stealing a pregnancy would give her joy. But what followed that night made her beg for death before morning. The meeting that changed everything. The year was 2014. The place was the University of Calabar, a sprawling campus where the humidity clung to your skin like a second layer, and the sound of crickets accompanied every late-night reading session. The Department of Mass Communication was housed in a faded yellow building that had seen better decades, but inside those lecture halls, dreams were being forged. Adawra Ez arrived late to the 7 a.m. class on communication theory. She was a girl from Enugu with high cheekbones, a sharp tongue, and a desperation to be loved that she hid behind loud laughter and even louder outfits. That morning, her hair was a mess. Her eyeliner was smudged, and she had forgotten her textbook for the third time that week. The lecturer, Dr. Okafor, was a man who took pleasure in humiliation. He had a voice that could peel paint, and a habit of asking impossible questions to students who looked unprepared. Adawra slipped through the back door of Lecture Hall D, her heart pounding, and scanned for an empty seat. There was only one, next to Chiamaka Okonkwo. Chiamaka was not someone Adawra had noticed before. She was quiet, the kind of quiet that made people underestimate her. She sat in the second row, always early, always with her notes color-coded, and her pens arranged by size. That morning, she was doodling wedding gowns in the margin of her notebook, elaborate things with lace trains and off-shoulder necklines. Adawra slid into the seat, breathless. "Hi, I'm Adawra. I promise I'm not usually this disorganized." Chiamaka looked up, and her eyes were kind. Not the fake kindness of someone who wanted something from you, but the real thing, warm, unguarded, almost maternal. "I'm Chiamaka. And don't worry. Dr. Okafor is a terror. But I took notes last week. You can borrow them." That was the beginning. Within a month, they were inseparable. They discovered they both loved plantain chips, hated early morning lectures, and had absent fathers. Adawra's had left when she was 7. Chiamaka's had died when she was 12. They shared secrets in the dark of their hostel rooms, whispered fears about money, about men, about whether they would ever be enough. By their second year, they had moved off campus together, renting a tiny room in a compound behind the Chicken Republic on Marion Road. The room was barely large enough for 2 beds and a wardrobe, but they painted the walls orange and hung fairy lights and called it the Palace. They cooked together. Adawra's bitter leaf soup was legendary, and Chiamaka's jollof rice could make a grown man weep. They studied together, their textbooks spread across the single table, their feet tangled under it. They attended church together on Sundays and parties on Saturdays, and everyone on campus knew them as the Twin Flames. Adawra's mother once asked her on the phone, "Don't you think you're too close? A woman needs her own life." Adawra had laughed. "Mummy, she is my life." She didn't know then how prophetic those words would be. The cracks began to show in their final year. Something shifted. It started small, as these things always do. Chiamaka met Ifeanyi Okafor, no relation to the dreaded lecturer, at a Faculty of Environmental Sciences exhibition. He was an architecture student with calloused hands from drawing blueprints, and a smile that made girls forget their own names. He was not loud or flashy. He didn't spray money at parties or drive a flashy car. What he did was show up quietly, consistently, like the morning sun. He walked Chiamaka to her faculty every day at 7:45 a.m., even when it meant he would be late for his own classes. He remembered that she liked her tea with 2 sugars and a splash of milk. He bought her pineapple suya from the vendor near the gate every Tuesday, because she once mentioned, in passing, that Tuesday afternoons made her sad. He asked about her dreams, her fears, her mother's health, her final year project. Adawra watched all of this from the sidelines. At first, she was genuinely happy. She hugged Kiyomaka when she announced, "I think I'm falling, Ada. Deep." She helped Kiyomaka pick out outfits for their dates. She even talked to Ifini on the phone once, threatening him with bodily harm if he ever broke her friend's heart. But inside, something cold was growing. It was not hatred. Adara did not hate Kiyomaka. How could she? This was her sister, her twin flame, the only person who had ever seen her cry and not looked away. No, it was worse than hatred. It was jealousy, the quiet, shameful kind that you don't admit even to yourself at 3 a.m. when you cannot sleep. Because while Kiyomaka was floating on the cloud of new love, Adara's love life was a cemetery. There had been Emeka in second year. He was a tall, dark political science student who quoted Chinua Achebe on their first date and made her feel like the most intelligent woman in the world. They dated for 4 months. She gave him her virginity on a rainy night in his hostel room, convinced he was the one. 2 weeks later, he stopped returning her calls. She later found out he had a fiancée in Abuja. Then there was Tund, a charming Yoruba boy from accounting. He was funny, generous, and had a smile that could light up the entire Calabar carnival. They lasted 6 months. She thought he was different. Then she walked into his apartment unannounced and found him in bed with 2 girls from their department. When she confronted him, he laughed. "Ada, you're too serious. Life is for enjoying." After that came Michael. Michael was perfect, or so she thought. He was a gentle, soft-spoken mass communication student who wrote her poems and cooked her breakfast. He told her he loved her after 3 weeks. She believed him. But then he started pulling away, becoming distant, cancelling dates. When she finally cornered him, he said, "You're too intense, Ada. You cling too much. I feel like I can't breathe." She clung because she was terrified of being left. And she was always left. So she watched Kiyomaka and Ifini do the disgusting things that happy couples do. Whispering in corners, feeding each other fried yams, laughing at inside jokes that excluded her, cuddling on the couch while Adara sat on the other end pretending to read a novel. Her jaw would tighten. Her stomach would churn. And she would think, why her? What does she have that I don't? She never said it aloud. But the thought took root. The graduation and the growing distance. They graduated in 2018. Kiyomaka got a job almost immediately, a PR firm in Lagos called Zenith Communications. The pay was decent, the office was in Victoria Island, and her boss was a sharp woman who took her under her wing. Ifini followed her to Lagos, got a job at an architecture firm on the mainland, and they moved into a small but cozy apartment in Lekki Phase 1. Adara stayed back in Calabar. She had no job offers, no connections, no plan. She moved back to her mother's house in Enugu and began freelancing as a content writer for a pittance. The work was sporadic, the pay was late, and her mother's sighs of disappointment were a constant soundtrack. Kiyomaka did not forget her. She called every day, sometimes twice. She sent money when Adara's phone got disconnected. She paid for Adara's transport to Lagos for job interviews that never panned out. She flew Adara down for her birthdays, buying her flights and booking her into nice hotels. She was, by every measure, a loyal and loving friend. But the distance, both physical and circumstantial, fed the jealousy. Adara would scroll through Kiyomaka's WhatsApp status and see photos of her and Ifini at rooftop bars in Victoria Island, at the beach in Tarkwa Bay, at his family's Christmas party in Anambra, where his mother had pulled Kiyomaka into a hug and called her daughter. She saw Kiyomaka's career blossom, promotions, awards, a LinkedIn profile that made Adara's own look like a graveyard. Meanwhile, Adara's life was a series of humiliations. She dated a banker in Enugu who slapped her across the face when she questioned his late nights. She stayed with him for 8 months because she was afraid to be alone. Then she dated a pastor, a real man of God, or so he claimed, who wanted a submissive helpmeet, but couldn't define what that meant without sounding like he wanted a servant. He dumped her when she refused to give him her ATM card. Then came the younger man. Chidi was 24 to her 30, charming and ambitious and broke. She paid his rent, bought his groceries, funded his startup that never launched. He left her after draining her savings, and she later discovered he had given her an STI, thankfully treatable, but the shame lingered. Why does she get everything? Adara would ask the darkness of her room at night. Why am I the one suffering? She never asked herself what she might have done differently. She never looked inward. She only looked at Kiyamaka's life and felt the green rot spread. The engagement and the wedding, when Kiyamaka called to say, "He proposed, Ada. He got down on one knee at the beach and I'm going to be his wife." Adara screamed into the phone. She screamed with joy, or at least she produced the sound of joy. But after the call ended, she sat on her bed in her mother's house, staring at the wall, and did not move for 2 hours. The wedding was in Owerri, Kiyamaka's hometown. It was a lavish affair, the kind of Nigerian wedding that people talk about for years. There were 2 ceremonies. A white wedding at the Catholic church with a choir that sang like angels, and a traditional wedding the next day with enough cow meat to feed a small army. Kiyamaka's father, her stepfather actually, but he had raised her, spent millions. The asoebi was a deep purple that made every woman look like royalty. Adara was the chief bridesmaid. She wore a gown that Kiyamaka had paid for, had her makeup done by Kiyamaka's artist, and stood at the altar smiling so hard that her cheeks ached by the end of the day. When the pastor asked, "Who gives this woman?" and Kiyamaka's stepfather stepped forward, Adara cried, real tears, because despite everything she loved her friend. At the reception, when Kiyamaka threw the bouquet, it sailed through the air and landed directly in Adara's hands. The crowd cheered. "You're next, you're next," they chanted. Adara laughed. She held up the bouquet like a trophy. But inside she thought, if only you knew. Part 5. The 2-year slide, 2 years passed. Adara turned 32. She had moved to Lagos finally, scraping together enough freelance work to afford a cramped studio apartment in Acha, a neighborhood where the roads flooded when it rained, and the landlord was a tyrant. She had a few acquaintances, really, but no one like Kiyamaka. No one who knew her secrets. Kiyamaka's life, by contrast, was a highlight reel. She got promoted to senior account manager at Zenith Communications. She and Ifeanyi bought a 3-bedroom apartment in Lekki Phase 1, a gated community with 24-hour electricity and a swimming pool. She traveled to Dubai, to South Africa, to Ghana. She posted photos of herself in beautiful places, wearing beautiful clothes, looking happy. Adara watched all of this from her Ajar studio, where the only window faced a wall, and the only sound was the neighbor's crying baby. She tried dating again. There was a man from a dating app who seemed normal until he started asking for nudes before they'd even met. There was a colleague from a writing gig who turned out to be married. There was a childhood friend her mother set her up with, a widower with 3 children, who talked about his late wife on every date. Nothing worked. Nothing stuck. And then the pregnancy. The announcement that broke something. Kiyamaka called on a Tuesday afternoon. Adara was in the middle of editing a 5,000-word article about cryptocurrency for a client who paid late and complained constantly. She almost didn't pick up. Ada, I have news. Tell me. I'm pregnant. Ada, I'm going to be a mother. We've been trying for months, and it finally happened. I'm 10 weeks. The doctor says everything looks perfect. Adara's hand tightened on the phone. She forced her voice to be light, excited. Oh my God, Kiyamaka. That's amazing. Congratulations. I'm so happy for you. They talked for 20 minutes about due dates, about names, about whether Kiamaka wanted a boy or a girl. She wanted a girl, she said, but would be happy with either. When the call ended, Adara sat in the silence of her apartment and felt something crack inside her. She has everything. A husband who loves her. A career that respects her. A child growing inside her. And me? I have nothing. I am nothing. That night she did not sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of her life that had led to this point. She thought about Emeka, Tund, Michael, the banker, the pastor, the younger man. She thought about her father leaving. She thought about her mother's disappointed face. She thought about every rejection, every humiliation, every time she had been told she was too much or not enough. And then, like a snake emerging from tall grass, a thought came to her. She didn't know where it came from. Maybe a forgotten folktale her grandmother had told her as a child. Maybe a dark corner of the internet she had visited at 3 a.m. during one of her sleepless nights. But it arrived with terrifying clarity. You can steal a pregnancy. She remembered the story. Her grandmother used to tell it in a low voice, late at night, when the fire was dying and the children were supposed to be asleep. It was about a woman who was jealous of her co-wife's pregnancy. She went to a witch in the village, who gave her a potion to drink. The next morning, the co-wife's belly was flat, and the jealous woman's belly was swollen. But the baby that came out was not a baby. It was a monster. Because you cannot steal what was never meant for you. Adawa had listened to that story with wide eyes as a child, shuddering at the monster. But now, as an adult, she heard a different message. It is possible. She began to research. The descent into darkness. It started innocently enough, or as innocently as anything can start when you're Googling how to steal a pregnancy. She found blogs, forums, YouTube channels dedicated to what they called woo magic. Most of it was nonsense, clearly written by teenagers or scammers. But then she found a site called The Womb Weaver's Grimoire. It was dark literally, a black background with red text, and it claimed to be the work of a woman in Benin who had learned from her grandmother, who had learned from hers, going back generations. The ritual was simple. The site claimed you needed a black candle, a bowl of palm oil, a photograph of the pregnant woman, a strand of your own hair, and a piece of dried umbilical cord from an animal was fine, as long as it had once connected mother to child. Then, at midnight, you would light the candle, drop the hair and the umbilical cord into the oil, place the photograph on top and chant the words, "Spirits of the night, spirits of the womb, hear me. I call upon the power that moves between worlds. Transfer this pregnancy from name of the woman to me. Let her belly empty. Let mine swell. What she carries, I shall carry. So mote it be." You would then cut your finger and let 3 drops of blood fall into the bowl. The candle would go out on its own, and the transfer would be complete. Adawara read the words 3 times. She told herself she was just curious. She told herself she would never actually do it. She closed the browser and went to make tea. But the words stayed with her. They whispered to her in the shower. They hummed in her ears while she worked. They visited her dreams, vivid, terrifying dreams in which she held a baby that was not hers, a baby with Kiamaka's eyes, and the baby laughed and laughed until its mouth became a black hole. She tried to fight it. She called Kiamaka more often, hoping that hearing her friend's voice would cure her. She went to church 3 different churches in 2 weeks, seeking deliverance. She even confided in her mother, vaguely, saying, "Mummy, I'm struggling with jealousy. I need help." Her mother had sighed. "Adara, you have always wanted what others have, since you were a little girl. Remember when you cried because Neki had a bicycle? You didn't even like bicycles. Just pray. Ask God to give you contentment." But prayer felt like whispering into a void. And the jealousy had teeth now. The visit, when Kiamaka invited her to spend the weekend in Lekki, Adawara almost said no. She knew what would happen if she went. She knew the temptation would be unbearable. But some part of her, the part that was already lost, wanted to be tempted. "Please come," Kiamaka said on the phone. Her voice was tired. "Ifeni is traveling for work all week, and I've been so exhausted. The second trimester is supposed to be easier, but I'm still nauseous and my back hurts, and I just need someone to help me with the cravings. Please, Ada, I miss you." Adawara packed a bag, and at the bottom of the bag, hidden in a pocket she had sewn into the lining, she placed the items she had gathered over the previous week. A black candle from a supermarket in Ajah, a small bowl, palm oil from her mother's kitchen, a printed photograph of Kiamaka from their graduation day, a strand of her own hair pulled from her brush, and a piece of dried goat umbilical cord she had bought from a herbalist in Oyingbo market for 500 naira. The herbalist had looked at her strangely. "What do you want this for?" "Art project," Adawara had lied. The herbalist had shrugged and taken the money. The last normal evening, she arrived at Kiamaka's apartment on a Thursday evening. The apartment was beautiful, spacious, tastefully decorated, with large windows that let in the Lagos breeze. Kiamaka met her at the door with a hug that was slightly awkward because of the belly. And what a belly it was. Kiamaka was in her second trimester, 22 weeks pregnant, and she was undeniably gloriously showing. Her bump was round and firm, a perfect little dome that she cradled with one hand almost unconsciously. She wore a flowing maternity dress in a soft yellow that made her skin glow. Adawara hugged her and felt the bump press against her own flat stomach. She smiled and said, "Look at you. You're huge." "I know," Kiamaka laughed. "The doctor says it's a healthy size. She's growing perfectly." "She? It's a girl?" "We found out last week. We're naming her Adana. It means her father's daughter." Ifeni cried when we found out. Adawara forced herself to feel happy. She followed Kiamaka into the living room, where the scent of pepper soup filled the air. Kiamaka had ordered from their favorite spot in Ajah, the same place they used to order from when they were students. There was also fresh ugba, fried plantains, and a bottle of Chapman for Adawara. Kiamaka couldn't drink because of the pregnancy. They ate and talked and laughed. They watched a Nollywood movie, one of those cheesy ones where the husband is cheating, and the best friend knows but won't say anything. Adawara thought the irony might kill her. By 9 p.m., Kiamaka was yawning. "I'm sorry, Ada. I can't stay up like I used to. The baby drains all my energy. Go to bed. I'll clean up. Are you sure?" "Positive, go." Kiamaka hugged her again, kissed her on the cheek, and waddled toward the master bedroom. At the door, she turned back. "I'm so glad you're here, Ada. I don't know what I'd do without you." Adawara smiled. "Go to sleep, pregnant woman." Kiamaka disappeared into the bedroom. Adawara heard the sound of the door clicking shut, then the muffled sound of her friend talking to her belly, because pregnant women did that, apparently, talk to the tiny person inside them as if they could hear. Adawara washed the dishes slowly, methodically. She swept the kitchen floor. She wiped the counters. She turned off the lights in the living room. And then she went to the guest bedroom, where she sat on the edge of the bed, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. "You don't have to do this," a voice said inside her. "You can still stop." But another voice, darker, older, more persuasive, whispered back, "Why should she have everything while you have nothing? It's not fair. It's never been fair. Take what should have been yours." She waited until 1 a.m. The night of the unholy cruel, the apartment was silent. The kind of silence that has weight, that presses down on you. Adawara crept out of the guest bedroom on bare feet, carrying the leather pouch and the bowl. She had changed into a dark nightgown, the kind that wouldn't show shadows. The corridor was dark, but a sliver of moonlight came through the living room windows, casting pale shapes on the floor. She moved slowly, carefully, avoiding the floorboards that she knew creaked. She had memorized them during her previous visits. The door to the master bedroom was slightly ajar. Kiyomaka had left it that way, she always did, in case she needed to call out in the night. Adawara pushed it open gently, wincing at the soft squeak of the hinges. Kiyomaka was asleep. She lay on her left side, the recommended position for pregnant women, with one hand resting on her belly, and the other tucked under her pillow. Her face was peaceful, younger somehow in sleep. The bump rose and fell gently with her breathing. Adawara stood at the foot of the bed for a long moment, watching. She felt something twist in her chest, guilt, maybe, or the last remnants of her conscience. "Don't do this," the voice pleaded. "She trusts you. She loves you. She is the only person who has never abandoned you." But the jealousy was a roaring fire now. It drowned out everything else. She knelt beside the bed. She placed the bowl on the floor and arranged the items inside. The palm oil, the photograph, the strand of hair, the umbilical cord. She lit the black candle. The flame flickered once, twice, then steadied. The shadows on the wall danced like living things. Adawara closed her eyes. She took a deep breath, and she began to chant. The words came out in a whisper, barely audible, but they felt ancient in her mouth. They felt like they had always been there, waiting for this moment. She spoke the name, Kiyomaka, and felt the air in the room change, become heavier, thicker, charged with something that was not electricity. She cut her finger with the needle. 3 drops of blood fell into the bowl, hissing softly as they hit the oil. "Spirits of the night, spirits of the womb, hear me," she whispered. "Transfer this pregnancy from Kiyomaka Okonkwo to me, Adawara Ez. Let her belly empty. Let mine swell. What she carries, I shall carry. So mote it be." The candle went out. Not like a normal candle being blown out. Not with smoke and a sputter. It simply ceased to be lit, as if someone had reached into the world and flipped a switch. The room plunged into complete, absolute darkness. And then Adawara felt it. A pull. Deep in her lower abdomen, below her navel, somewhere in the core of her being. It was like a fishhook had been inserted into her womb and was being yanked upward. She gasped, but no sound came out. Her body convulsed once, twice. She clutched her stomach, her nails digging into her skin. On the bed, Kiyomaka stirred. She moaned softly, turned onto her back, then settled again. Her hand fell away from her belly. Adawara looked at her friend's stomach. In the darkness, she couldn't see clearly, but she could sense, she could feel that something had changed. The roundness was gone. The bump had flattened. She scrambled to her feet, grabbed the bowl and the remnants of the candle, and fled back to the guest bedroom. She locked the door. She fell onto the bed, trembling uncontrollably, and pulled the covers over her head like a child hiding from a nightmare. She did not sleep, but she lay there, shaking, until the first light of dawn crept through the curtains. The morning of lightness. Kiyomaka woke up at 6:15 a.m., which was late for her. Usually, the baby's kicks or the need to pee dragged her out of bed by 5:30. But this morning she had slept through everything. She stretched her arms above her head and froze. Something was wrong. Or rather, something was different. Her body felt light. Too light. She looked down at herself, still groggy, and blinked. Her belly was flat. Not smaller, not less swollen. Flat, like a board, like she had never been pregnant at all. She sat up so fast that her head spun. She pressed both hands against her stomach, pushing, probing. There was nothing there. No hardness, no roundness, no little feet kicking from the inside. Just her normal, pre-pregnancy abdomen, soft and empty. What? She started to say. But then she noticed something else. Her back didn't hurt. The dull, constant ache that had plagued her since week 14 was gone. Her hips didn't feel like they were being pried apart. Her breasts were no longer tender. The nausea that had greeted her every morning for the past 4 months, the violent, life-draining nausea that made her vomit even water, was absent. She felt amazing. She felt like she had before pregnancy. Energetic, clear-headed, almost youthful. She stumbled out of bed and into the ensuite bathroom. She flipped on the light and stared at her reflection. Her face was still the same cheekbones, the same eyes, the same lips. But her body was different. She turned sideways, then front, then sideways again. Flat. Maybe it was a dream, she thought. Maybe I was never really pregnant. Maybe the pregnancy test was wrong. The ultrasound was wrong. The doctor was wrong. The kicks were all in my head. But she knew that wasn't true. She had seen the baby on the screen. She had heard the heartbeat fast and strong, like a little drum. She had felt her daughter move, had talked to her, had sung to her. Did I miscarry in my sleep? The thought was terrifying, but even as it came, she knew it wasn't right. A miscarriage at 22 weeks would have been bloody, painful, unmistakable. She would have woken up in a pool of blood. She would have been cramping, hemorrhaging, dying. But she felt fine. Better than fine. She felt wonderful. She laughed. It was a nervous, bewildered laugh, but it was a laugh nonetheless. God, you've performed a miracle, she whispered to her reflection. Or maybe it was a false pregnancy all along. I don't know. But thank you for taking away the pain. She decided she would call her doctor later. For now, she wanted to enjoy this strange, inexplicable lightness. She put on a pair of shorts that hadn't fit her in months. They fit now, loosely, and a tank top. She walked to the kitchen, her steps bouncy, and began to make breakfast. When Adara emerged from the guest bedroom at 7:30 a.m., Kiamaka was at the stove, flipping pancakes. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Kiamaka called out, her voice bright. "I made breakfast." "Well, I'm making breakfast. Pancakes, eggs, and I found some plantains in the freezer." Sit down, sit down." Adara stood in the doorway, frozen. She looked paler than usual, and there were dark circles under her eyes. But Kiamaka didn't notice. She was too busy being happy. "Kiamaka," Adara said slowly. You're standing." "Of course I'm standing. Why wouldn't I be?" "You're back. It doesn't hurt." Kiamaka laughed. "That's the craziest thing. I woke up today feeling like a new person. Look." She turned sideways and patted her flat stomach. "The bump is gone. I don't know what happened. Maybe it was a phantom pregnancy. But I feel amazing. I have so much energy. I feel like I could run a marathon." Adara forced a smile. It was the hardest smile she had ever produced. That's great, Kiamaka. I'm happy for you. Come, eat. You look tired. Did you sleep well?" "I slept fine." But she hadn't. And as she sat down at the kitchen table, she felt a dull ache begin to spread from her pelvis upward. She ignored it. She ate the pancakes. They tasted like cardboard. And she listened to Kiamaka chatter about how strange the human body was, how wonderful God was, how she was going to call her doctor and ask for a full workup. By midday, Kiamaka had gone for a walk around the neighborhood. She was practically skipping. Adara stayed behind, claiming a headache. She went to the guest bedroom, locked the door, and lay down on the bed. The ache had sharpened into a cramp. It was low in her belly, persistent, gnawing. She pressed her hand against her stomach and felt nothing unusual, no bump, no hardness. Just pain. It worked, she thought. The pregnancy is in me. But where is it? Why can't I see it? She didn't understand. She had stolen the pregnancy, but the pregnancy was not a physical object. It was a spiritual one. The baby, the soul, the life force had transferred to her, but her body had not changed. Not yet. The witches knew that. The website had not mentioned that part. Or maybe it had, and she had been too desperate to read carefully. By evening, the cramps had become waves. Every few minutes, a surge of pain would wash over her, starting in her lower back and radiating to her thighs. She bit her lip to keep from crying out. She curled into a fetal position, her knees drawn to her chest. Kiamaka knocked on the door. Ada? You've been in there all day. Are you okay? I'm fine, Adara managed. Just bad period cramps. Do you need anything? Paracetamol? A hot water bottle? No, I'll be fine. Just need to rest. Okay. I'm here if you need me. The footsteps retreated. Adara lay in the dark, sweat soaking through her nightgown, and wondered what she had done. The sorrows that came with the flesh night fell, and with it came the true horror. The cramps didn't stop. They intensified. By 10 p.m., Adara was moaning into her pillow, her body racked with spasms that felt like labor. But she wasn't in labor, she wasn't even showing. There was nothing to push out. Just pain. Pure, unrelenting, purposeless pain. Then came the nausea. Not the gentle queasiness she had imagined when she thought about morning sickness. This was violent, explosive, gut-wrenching. She barely made it to the guest bathroom before she vomited not just once, but again and again, until there was nothing left in her stomach and she was heaving bile. She collapsed on the cold tile floor, her cheek pressed against the grout, and wept. What is happening to me? But deep down, she knew. She hadn't stolen only the pregnancy. She had stolen everything that came with it. Every ache, every sleepless night, every back spasm, every leg cramp, every wave of hormonal rage, every moment of breathlessness, every fear, every tear. Kiamaka's second trimester had been a silent war. She had complained sometimes a little, here and there, but mostly she had suffered in private. She didn't want to seem ungrateful. She didn't want to be the pregnant woman who whined. So she smiled through the sciatica that made her limp, the acid reflux that burned her throat, the insomnia that left her staring at the ceiling for hours. She smiled through the anxiety. What if the baby wasn't healthy? What if she died in childbirth? What if Ifini stopped loving her because her body had changed? What if she wasn't a good mother? These thoughts had haunted her every night, whispering in the darkness, but she had never told Adara. She had been too ashamed. Adara had seen only the glow, the love, the attention. She had not seen the 2 a.m. panic attacks. She had not seen Kiamaka crying in the shower because she felt ugly and enormous. She had not seen the fights with Ifini over money-quiet, tense arguments about hospital bills and baby supplies. She had not seen the loneliness of a husband who traveled too much, leaving her to eat dinner alone in their big, empty apartment. All of it, every hidden sorrow, every unspoken fear, every physical agony rushed into Adara's body like floodwater into a dry riverbed. And it was too much. By 1 a.m. exactly 24 hours after the ritual, Adara was on her hands and knees, crawling back to the bathroom for the 10th time. Her vision blurred. Her skin burned with a fever that came and went in waves. Her joints ached as if they were being pulled apart. Then came the worst part, the emotional weight. A crushing, inexplicable depression settled on her chest. It was not her own sadness, it was Kiamaka's. The sadness of a woman who had always wanted to be a mother, but was terrified she would fail. The sadness of a woman who had lost her biological father at 12 and had spent her whole life afraid of abandonment. the sadness of a woman who smiled so the world wouldn't see her breaking. Adawara felt all of it. She felt worthless, ugly, alone. She thought of all the men who had left her, all the friends who had succeeded, all the years she had wasted comparing herself to others. But layered on top of that was Kiyamaka's pain, and it was heavier. She was suffering, Adawara realized. All this time, while I was jealous of her, she was suffering. And I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it. She wept into the cold tile floor, her body convulsing with sobs. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't know." But the pain didn't care about her apologies. It kept coming. The breaking point at 3 a.m., Adawara could not take it anymore. She dragged herself off the bathroom floor, using the sink to pull herself up. Her legs were shaking. Her nightgown was soaked with sweat and vomit. She looked like a ghost, pale, hollow-eyed, barely human. She stumbled out of the guest bedroom and down the corridor to the master bedroom. The door was still ajar. She pushed it open and found Kiyamaka sleeping peacefully, her flat belly rising and falling, her face soft and untroubled. For a moment, Adawara hated her. The jealousy flared one last time, a dying ember. How dare she sleep so peacefully while I suffer? How dare she be free of the pain that I now carry? But the hatred was weak. It crumbled in the face of her desperation. She fell to her knees beside the bed. She grabbed the edge of the mattress and shook it. "Kiyamaka," she whispered. Then louder, "Kiyamaka." Kiyamaka woke with a start. She sat up, blinking in the darkness. "Ada, what's wrong? What time is it?" "Please," Adawara sobbed. "Please help me." Kiyamaka reached over and turned on the bedside lamp. The light was harsh, unforgiving. It illuminated Adawara's face, the tear tracks, the sweat, the wild terror in her eyes. "Oh my God," Kiyamaka breathed. "Ada, you look like death. What happened? Are you sick? Do you need a hospital?" Adawara shook her head. She was crying so hard she could barely speak. "I stole it. I stole your pregnancy." Kiyamaka stared at her. The words hung in the air, incomprehensible. "What? I'm a witch. I did it last night. While you were sleeping, I did a ritual. I stole your baby. That's why your belly is flat. That's why you feel so light. I took it. I took everything." Kiyamaka's hand flew to her flat stomach. She looked down at it, then back at Adawara. Her face was a mask of confusion and dawning horror. "That's not possible. That's not Ada. What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm a monster." Adawara's voice broke. "I was so jealous. I couldn't stand it. Your husband, your job, your pregnancy. You had everything I wanted. So I took it. I stole your baby. But I didn't know. I didn't know it would come with all the pain. I thought pregnancy was beautiful. I thought you were living the dream. But I can't carry this. The pain is killing me. Please. Forgive me. Let me give it back." Kiyamaka was silent for a long time. She stared at Adawara, her best friend, her sister, the woman she had loved and trusted for nearly a decade. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. And then, slowly, something shifted in her face. The confusion faded. The horror remained, but underneath it was something else, something that looked like sorrow. "You fool," she said softly. Her voice was not angry. It was tired, broken. "You absolute fool. I know. Do you have any idea what I've been going through?" Kiyamaka's voice rose. "Do you have any idea how many nights I've cried myself to sleep? How many times I've been afraid that I would lose this baby? How much pain I've been in?" "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "Of course you didn't know. Because you never asked. You never looked past the surface. You saw the bump and the baby shower and the Instagram photos, and you decided I had everything. But you never asked me if I was okay. You never asked me if I was scared. You were too busy resenting me. Adara bowed her head. The tears wouldn't stop. You're right. You're right about everything. Kiyamaka sighed. It was a long, shuddering sigh, like air leaving a punctured tire. She reached out and placed a hand on Adara's sweaty forehead. I forgive you, she said. God knows I shouldn't. But I forgive you. Because you're my friend. And because whatever spirit you invited into your body, it's not welcome here. She got out of bed and went to the kitchen. She returned with a glass of water and a Bible, a worn, leather-bound Bible that had belonged to her late father. She sat on the edge of the bed and opened it to Psalm 51. We're going to pray, she said. And then you're going to go back to that room, and you're going to speak to whatever demon you invited, and you're going to send it back to hell. Do you understand? Adara nodded. They prayed until dawn. Kiyamaka's voice was steady, authoritative, like a mother commanding her child to come inside. Adara's voice was a cracked whisper, but she prayed too desperately, sincerely, with every fiber of her being. When the sun began to lighten the sky, Kiyamaka closed the Bible. Go, she said. Do what you need to do. Adara returned to the guest bedroom. She gathered the remnants of the ritual, the burnt candle stub, the bowl with the dried oil, the photograph of Kiyamaka. She lit a new candle, a white one she found in the kitchen drawer. She placed the items in front of her and spoke to the darkness. Spirits of the night, I renounce you. I break every covenant I made with you. I return this pregnancy to its rightful owner. Take back the pain. Take back the sorrow. Let me carry my own burdens, not hers. In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to leave. The white candle flared brighter than any candle should, and then died. The room was silent. Adara fell onto the bed and slept. Part 14. The morning after the return, she woke at noon. The sun was high and the room was filled with golden light. She felt normal. Not good exactly. She was dehydrated, exhausted, and her body ached from the ordeal. But the searing pain was gone. The nausea was gone. The crushing depression had lifted. She touched her stomach. Flat, empty, just her. She walked to the master bedroom. The door was open. Kiyamaka was sitting up in bed, one hand on her belly, which had returned, round and firm, exactly as it had been 2 days ago. Kiyamaka looked tired again, her face lined with the familiar exhaustion of pregnancy. But she was smiling. She kicked me awake, Kiyamaka said, patting her bump. I think she was saying, Mummy, I'm back. Adara fell to her knees. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to ever speak to me again. But I needed you to know that I'm sorry. Kiyamaka looked at her for a long moment. Then she reached down and lifted Adara's chin with her fingers. I told you last night. I forgive you. But Ada, you need help. Real help, not witchcraft. Not more prayer. Therapy. Because this jealousy, it will kill you if you don't kill it first. Adara nodded. Tears streamed down her face. I will. I promise. Good. Kiyamaka pulled her into a hug. The bump pressed between them, warm and alive. Now help me up. I need to pee for the 100th time today. They laughed, a strange, broken, healing laugh, and Adara helped her friend out of bed. The aftermath, they didn't speak of that night again for many months. Adara moved to a new city Port Harcourt where no one knew her. She found a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Ntishi, who specialized in jealousy and comparison disorders. She went every week, even when it was hard, even when she wanted to cancel. She learned to trace her jealousy back to its roots. Her father's abandonment. Her mother's criticism. The deep belief that she was not enough and never would be. She stopped checking Kiamaka's social media. She stopped comparing her life to others. She started her own small content writing agency, and it grew slowly but steadily. She made new friends, not replacements for Kiamaka, but additions. She learned to be alone without being lonely. She still visited Kiamaka. She was there when Adana was born, a screaming, beautiful girl with her father's dimples and her mother's determined chin. Adara held the baby and felt no jealousy. Just love. Just awe. She was there for the first birthday, the second, the third. She became Auntie Ada, the woman who brought the best toys and told the funniest stories. She watched Adana grow, and she loved her as if she were her own, but without the need to possess her. The jealousy never fully disappeared. It would flare up sometimes. When Kiamaka announced a promotion, when Ifinyi bought her a new car, when their family photos looked like something out of a magazine. But Adara had learned to recognize the feeling, to name it, to breathe through it. She would call Dr. Nkechi, or write in her journal, or go for a run. She would remind herself, her blessing is not my lack. Her success is not my failure. And slowly, painfully, she began to build a life she didn't need to escape from. The lesson. Years later, long after the scars had healed, Adara sat on a beach in Calabar, the same beach where Kiamaka and Ifinyi had once walked hand in hand. She was alone, watching the waves, and she thought about that night. The black candle, the chant, the pain. She thought about what she had learned. That envy is not a harmless desire. It is a poison. And if you drink it, you do not hurt the person you envy. You hurt yourself. She thought about Kiamaka's hidden sorrows, the pain she had never seen because she had never looked. And she made a promise to herself, to the ocean, to whatever God still listened. I will never again assume that someone else's life is easier than mine. I will never again let jealousy turn me into a monster. The waves crashed against the shore. The sun set in a blaze of orange and gold. And Adara Ez, once a witch, now just a woman, went home to her small apartment and her small business and her small, hard-won peace. It was enough.